last minute to sit down.
Yeah, I know. All right, let me call this meeting to order. This is a special meeting of City Council along with the Planning Commission. I'm pleased that everybody's been able to make it. David Cohen is, I guess, out of town or not able to make it. He's the only one not present from the Planning, and of course City Council is all in full attendance. I appreciate people making their schedules available to meet today because it's a quick schedule, but it's an important subject. So we're here today to interact with the Planning Commission to understand their recommendations on where they think the city should go in our parking initiatives that have been ongoing now for, I've lost track of time, 2 or 3 years, maybe forever, but more formally in the last couple of years, definitely. It's something that's important to the city, important to all of us, and that's why we're going to take the time necessary now and into the future to make sure that the council makes the right decisions for the rest of the city. So, with that introduction, and with the acknowledgement that because I always have to say this, the press and public have been duly notified for the Freedom of Information Act, I'm going to move on to a discussion of parking management and ask Douglas to summarize for us the recommendations from. Okay.
To make Marie happy, I'll stand up here and talk from the podium. Just to recap a little bit, the Planning Commission, it was just over 2 years ago that the Planning Commission wrapped up their work on the comprehensive plan, and it became very evident during their work on the comprehensive plan that the parking issues in the city were going to continue to exacerbate if they went unchecked. So about 2 years ago, they really began to try to take a hard look at parking and try to come up with some suggestions that could improve the issues that parking brings to the island, including it affects public safety, the infrastructure of the island, the public facilities of the island, and the quality of life of the residents of the island. Quickly after beginning that work, the Planning Commission and the City Council had 1 or 2 meetings, and really the Planning Commission thought that it would be useful at this juncture to meet again, to have a talk about what they've done so far, and see if the direction that they have chosen is worth pursuing more, or if it's something that the City Council would prefer that the Planning Commission go in a different direction, and just generally get feedback on the direction the Planning Commission is currently headed. Since we've last met, the Planning Commission did hold a series of drop-in meetings with the residents. They were well attended. There was very good feedback given in those meetings via email, verbal comment, and written comment. And the Planning Commission took those comments, and a lot of what they're looking at today is directly as a result of the feedback that came back through those drop-ins. So that was very worthwhile venture for the city and for the Planning Commission. So glad that they did that. The Planning Commission has recently identified a series of short-term goals related to parking and a series of long-term goals related to parking. And I'm not really going to talk in great detail about those sets of goals because we really wanted to focus tonight on probably the most challenging of their short-term goals, and that would be to create an annual pass system. And that pass system would require that non-residents and non-owners acquire a pass to park on the edges of the roadways outside of the commercial district. There are some other short-term goals there that are either in progress or much easier to undertake than that one. And then there are some long-term goals that really probably need some refining and some discussion at the Planning Commission level. But this idea of creating a pass system is currently what the Planning Commission is focusing in on, and that pass system would, and the number that has been, I would say, loosely agreed upon is the city issuing 1,000 annual passes annually, each year. 1,000 passes could be issued. The cost for those passes could be $65, and the Planning Commission is envisioning that this limitation on passes would be enforced during the busy times of the summer when the parking meters are currently enforced, and that's March through September, and really only during peak hours, so 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. If a visitor were to come, they currently can come, and they can obviously pull off on the side of the road anywhere without paying, and the Planning Commission, I think, feels like there's basically an incentive to go outside of the commercial district because it's free, and this would take away that incentive. It would also hopefully give the framework for future controls if the number of visitors needed to be. It would have some flexibility in it, so if the number was still too great, the number of passes could be reduced. And there's also, kind of at the last meeting, the idea of when those annual passes were issued, if there was still capacity and the commercial district was full, there could be a mechanism to issue daily passes to park outside of the commercial district. So that really, in a nutshell, is kind of the direction the Planning Commission is looking to go. And feedback would be the Planning Commission can either go a different direction, it can continue to work in this direction and refine that. The Planning Commission would probably be happy if the City Council would take the lead and run with it. So really it's up to the will of the City Council of how we go from there, and we thought we'd just like to hear your comments about that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we know everybody has, virtually everybody attended all the open houses that were held. As Douglas indicated, council was there in large number. And so I'm glad that not only did we reach out to the citizens came forward, and we did hear a lot of the points that you're talking about here. Relative to the seasonal pass system, it's my understanding in thinking about this, very difficult to implement and coordinate. Just takes more people than we have now and more resources than what we have now. But if it's the will, we'll find a way to get it done. I don't know how the 1,000 was derived. Is that just looking at how many parking spaces are available? And
That's loosely what happened. The commission talked about a number being somewhere between 600 and unlimited. There'd be some benefit to it being unlimited. You could see what happened the first year and then refine the number down. But I think really the rationale behind 1,000 is from the counts that Noel did. That really is the capacity of the areas outside of the commercial district. That's, if you have 1,000, if every pass holder showed up, basically every space would be full. Now, it's not expected that would happen, but that's really the rationale behind 1,000. Is they're basically about 1,000 places for cars to park currently.
And this is an island-wide implementation, which means if somebody back on Waterway is having a birthday party and doesn't have adequate space for the parking of the kids' vehicles on their own property and would normally use the right-of-way, they would have to get a pass.
That's correct.
For that.
And part of this process too is the staff of the city really talked about how to implement it. And we don't think that there's a way of, if you're really getting into enforcing parking on an island-wide basis, there's not a way to kind of draw the line, say at any back road, and say we're going to stop enforcement here, because inevitably that just pushes the cars to where that line is on the other side of that line. So really, the staff believes that it would have to be enforced pretty much island-wide. You get into that island-wide system, it then also requires residents all over the island to deal with it in some way, be it get the passes that you talked about. The issue of signage was talked about at the staff level and at the planning commission level. There would need to be signage so that you knew that you couldn't just go, into the middle of the block at 28th.
Well, every block in both directions would have to have a sign. I mean, I'm not a sign expert, but that'd be my
That's what
expectation.
the police department confirmed that for it to be enforceable, that was.
And the intent would be to provide residents and property owners with a pass, as many passes as they request. I mean, there's got to be some.
Right. So again, this was talked about at the staff level of how to differentiate an owner's car from a visitor's car. It became very clear that the hurricane reentry sticker has been so loosely administered that it wouldn't really be useful in its current version, but that a similar process could be refined and more controls put on it. I think now it's a fairly loose program, so that there would be an administration in improving that, but a similar program to that could be used to differentiate the cars. The number of how many stickers a resident would get, we haven't gotten to that level
Left
of
to an
detail.
operational plan. Okay. Barb?
So we're going to have season stickers, but what about the people who just want to come day trip? They can only park in the commercial lot?
That was the initial idea at the last planning commission meeting. So that's one of the points that hasn't been fully fleshed out of how that day pass mechanism would work. But there, at the last meeting, the planning commission agreed that it would be beneficial to have some mechanism if there was no space in the commercial district and you weren't a pass holder, that you could somehow get a day pass.
Okay, just trying to be clear. So the day tripper who comes here and stays at the Hampton Inn across the way, whatever, comes to the island, he has to park in the city lot. If the city lot is full, then he can buy a day sticker to park on the street.
That's right.
Okay,
And-
then
and
how
not-
does that
and-
limit parking? If you keep doing that, where do you put the cutoff? If the object is, my object has always been that to protect the neighborhoods and to stop or cut down on day visitor parking to the island. If you just keep giving out passes.
So one of the ideas, and again, the idea of day passes was kind of added in at the last minute, but one of the ideas discussed at the last meeting was to set a limit for both, that there's 1,000 seasonal passes, maybe the limit for day passes is 300, but that you also set a limit there, so it's not a complete, and another way of doing it was only when the city lot was full. But the details with the daily passes has not been fully worked out.
Other questions? Jimmy?
Yeah, the 1,000. I mean, I just kind of look at the numbers. And number one, I thank the commission for the work y'all have done. I mean, it's probably the toughest job facing Isle of Palms, and y'all have got the toughest one here. So I commend y'all for what you're trying to do. But I just look at the numbers. Like in Mount Pleasant alone, there's 68,000 people. How do you say who's the 1,000 people who get the passes, and how does a person qualify for that? And the numbers are staggering when we start looking around Charleston County. And I know we need to take care of our residents first and foremost. But it almost seems like that 1,000 number, how many of those people are going to come on a regular basis to the beach? I'm just talking out loud here.
Could I
Yeah,
jump in?
go ahead.
From those open houses that we've had, it came pretty clear that there are people that come to the beach, and then there are people that go to the Isle of Palms, and they're kind of distinct, different people. People who come to the Isle of Palms have their spot. They might be going to 25th to surf or 32nd to wind paraglide, whatever that stuff is. They're here for a purpose and a reason. They tend to go to the same spots, and they're visiting the Isle of Palms. The people that are staying at the Hampton Inn across the connector are some of the people that are coming to the beach We just happen to be the lucky beach that weekend. And the notion being, they're coming, they would generally go to the central business district. That's where there's parking that they know about. That's where there are facilities, restrooms, restaurants, food. I think you might even be able to get an umbrella. So those are people truly coming for a day. And it could be that they might be coming for 3 or 4 days. I don't think everybody who stays at a hotel on the Isle of Palms Connector is going to the beach every day. They might be going playing golf one day. So the notion is that they don't have this vested interest in the Isle of Palms. They're just going to the beach. And most of them would rather go, I think, to a place that has facilities. And so you need to encourage them to park where they can park. I think what happens is those visitors go to County Park or the city lots and they say, ooh, $7. I'm not paying $7. And they just start to meander slightly away from the central business district to park free. So the notion of paying to park kind of evens that field. I think you'll find people that are parking along the bend at 21st Avenue, those who are starting to go down Carolina, are those people that would normally otherwise be parking at the central business district, but just don't want to pay $7. The notion of charging to park kind of, in a sense, might even out that playing field of how people might be actually, in their mind, using the beach. Those people who surf, they're still going to go to 25th Avenue if they can. So, getting back then to your question of how many people in Mount Pleasant or Charleston County would want to buy a pass, I think the people that we're looking at buying those passes are those people that come frequently to the Isle of Palms. Folks that I've talked to that live in Mount Pleasant, in other parts of Charleston County, they're coming around, 7 to 10 times a season, and generally it's for an activity or they're spot at the beach that they prefer. And the notion is those people that are then parking in our neighborhoods are people that have kind of a little bit more of a vested interest in the Isle of Palms, and especially now that we're going to charge them at least $65. I think they might have an even higher appreciation for the Isle of Palms. Now, how does that get vetted out? Right now our notion probably just first come, first served basis. Those who really care about coming to the Isle of Palms, who are going to be hearing about this and probably have their eyes on the newspapers and all hearing about this stuff, are probably wanting to know when those are going to go on sale, so they know that they've got to get their pass. And who knows if we'll sell 1,000. The casual beachgoer, they don't care, and so they won't get a pass, and so they'll have to look to parking at the central business district, which perhaps, if they had $7, they'd have been parking there anyway.
No?
One thing that I think has been consistent over the last 2 years is what is the number? We've looked at numbers from 1,000 down to 200, all different kinds of numbers as to how many parking spaces do we want to allow? Do we want to limit it to the bare minimum, or do we want to bring it out to the absolute max? So the 1,000 spaces would be a maximum number of what we feel there are available parking spaces. I don't necessarily think that the number of 1,000 is etched in stone. We may want to adjust that and have 700, and then have maybe 300 daily passes. But that number has been tossed back and forth, and I think that's probably been the most difficult thing that we've had, is trying to come up with what is the number. We want to severely limit it, or do we want to open it wide open?
The administration of this is just, well, you can understand what it is. I grapple with a whole bunch of things. We have a rental property that is going to have I always use my kid's birthday party. They're going to have a birthday party. Well, they can put 4 cars on the rental property off the right-of-way, but the other 6 historically would park in the right-of-way. Now we're saying you don't have an annual pass, And by the way, you probably can't get a day pass because you're not the property owner, so you can't park. So all these rental properties who may have a grandmother's, birthday party, can't have anybody over there unless they can park on their own property,
Right.
Which is very limiting vis-à-vis what we've ever had in the past.
And there's a lot of things that we haven't
Haven't come to grips with it, I know.
Exactly. But the one thing also that during the forums that we've had, starting with the very first one and then the recent three, I think that one thing that I heard most of the public say is that they do want to implement some type of a paid parking program. And we've talked about kiosks, we've talked about a lot of different things, but that's been very, very steadfast that the public wants some type of a pay-to-park program. So,
I know that, I think Sullivan's Island, I was mentioning to Linda earlier, Sullivan's Island's where we are tonight. They were there 2 years ago, and all they've done thus far is hire a consultant who hasn't filed a report yet.
Right.
And
it's not easy.
I asked the other day, Carl Smith, what do you think it's going to say? He says, I don't know. They're probably going to suggest kiosks or something, So,
I got a
oh,
question.
Ryan, please.
My question, basically is I think one of the biggest things driving this was public safety, obviously. Cars, and I think about going down Palm Boulevard, cars being so far off the road and trying to manage that parking along the side of the road. Let's say somebody buys a permit, a $65 permit. They park on the side of the road. They're not 4 foot off the road. They get a ticket.
Right.
What good is that permit doing? The thing is, now we can ticket them.
It's not a permit to break the law.
I'm not done. We can ticket them, but still, that car is still sitting there as a public safety hazard. Even though we ticketed them, they have a permit, they're still sitting there. They can sit there all day long. It hasn't solved any of their problems. So the thing is, I think one of the best things that we did was last year was use that white chalk line, which showed people how far to get off the road, directed them. And that's one of the biggest problems that we're having is when people come across the connector, they may not have ever been to the island before. They're coming across the connector, they're new to the area, and they're going to follow traffic. Because they come across and you come along and you're looking at it, it's like, which way do I go? There's not enough signage. There's not enough visual signage out there. And some of the things that I have printed, Linda, if you can pull those out for me, some of the things that I printed up, as soon as you come in across this connector and you're coming into the gateway to Olive Palms, people need to be, told what to do. And it needs to be in front of them all the time. So when they're coming across the connector, you need to look at a sign that says go forward or go right. Or when you're coming across Breach Inlet, it says when you come up to the commercial station, it says go turn right. It's commercial. It basically keeps them in that area. So if you look at, and this is some of the things I did, that's basically some of the things we need to utilize, and it's utilized in different cities. So it's always in front of where to go. The biggest thing is, like I said, it's coming down to that public safety. And how do we utilize it? Like I said, the chalk line was the best thing ever. We didn't have a whole lot of issues. Once we utilized that, the cars were off the road. And when if somebody does park next to the road, they get a ticket, but you know what? It's still a problem. It's still sitting there.
One of the advantages of having an annual pass is you can give that information to people as they get their passes.
Right.
So it's not a happenstance thing. When you get your documentation for your pass, it says, this is where you can park, this is the rules, this is how far off.
Right.
So it gives you a mechanism to do things like that rather than just a sign coming across the connector.
Right.
Let me have Bev.
When people pay for something, they have an investment. When they have an investment, they tend to take it more seriously. It's the same thing when you buy a puppy.
Yeah. Well, if they have a pass and it's numbered and we know their name, you know.
We know their names.
The threat
They
is that
will have- I mean-
they can have it pulled.
Right.
There's ways of when they get the pass, they get a piece of paper that they sign, just like a tenant would. If you're coming in to rent a house for a week, these are the rules, this is what you do. And most of those people that, just like you, have talked to a lot of people that come to the beach on a regular basis. And they think, yeah, you know what? All those people who used to go to the Folly Park will be coming here next summer, the summer after, as long as Folly doesn't have a
County park.
beach.
Let me ask Marty.
And I would agree with both of you, but on the other hand, the people who are going to want to buy the passes, I would bet, are the people that are coming to the island now and are abiding by the rules. And sure, they need to sign something, but I would be willing to bet that those folks are steady beachgoers, know what the rules are, know what the parking rules are, take the trash back home with them, or at least put them in one of our yellow trash cans. I think I'll call it the casual day trippers are what we really need to focus on. The surfers are going to park where they park to surf. The fishermen are going to park where they go to fish. They've got the good spot. I agree with Ryan. We need some signage to get them down into that business district, get them down to public parking. And on the other hand, some of the other short-term suggestions here, let's get the signage out to where they're not parking next to the intersections. That's the public safety part of it. You know, we had someone that got a ticket for parking next to a fire hydrant, couldn't understand why he got a ticket. I don't know where he got his driver's license, but he shouldn't know. But the corners are a different thing, and the public safety is the big issue here.
Patrick.
You know, we're looking for some feedback and actually where we can all agree in terms of direction. You know, we get bogged down with the minutia and coming up with all these things. But, you know, we all know the demographics and that, you know, that Mount Pleasant is going to be expanding and maybe we'll get some fallout from Folly Beach. And it's not going to be less, you know, it's going to be more. And if we don't do something now, I mean, we haven't, even with, I think we've made an incremental positive step for you to consider. But then, you know, we haven't done anything to the residents, for the residents yet. Exactly. You know, in trying to answer their concerns about people, you know, parking in their driveways, and et cetera, et cetera.
Michael.
Patrick, I think needs to be the primary focus on, let's look at the residents first. Let's identify where the problem, to me, I'm a real big advocate of a sticker program island-wide for all property owners, and restrict parking in the neighborhoods. No parking in Carolina, no parking on the finger streets, and just keep the parking designated on Palm, some limited parking on Ocean to satisfy the beachfront management program. And let's start with that, and then some kind of a sticker pass. If someone is having an anniversary party, they can come and get 20 passes from City Hall or whatever, or plan ahead and do that, where they can park in the neighborhood legally. But other than that, the only people that should be able to park in the neighborhoods are residents and of the island, and keep it that way, and then focus the parking there, and then see how that goes. And once they can't find enough parking spots, then, guess what? We're full, and we send people home.
Ron, you had something?
Yeah, part of going back first to Ryan's point, which then ties into your point, safety, and with parking, there's safety in numbers, or what would end up becoming a lack of numbers. Even with 1,000 parking places, we're never, very seldom, except for those few weekends of the summer, can find all those spaces being filled. People, even with passes, generally don't go to the beach both days of the weekend, and we're generally talking about the weekend. The reason that we kind of stop short-term goal with the parking pass in a limited number is that we feel that we are going to be reducing the overall quantity of parking. We're not going to be having the 500 to 600 cars along Palm Boulevard. So we are giving relief to the residents. Not specifically, we'd love to be able to do what you've said, no more parking in the neighborhoods and finger avenues. But until we could really finalize that plan of how do you get that limited parking on Ocean Boulevard or not, or wherever that parking needs to be, we just felt this would be the first good step, first good way of getting there. Short of the daily passes, and 300 daily parking passes is 300 people, for sure, parking on your beach. I think that number's too high. 1,000 people, 1,000 parking passes for the season might equate to, 250 cars, or 300 cars, maybe 400 cars on a weekend, which is far bit less than what we're experiencing now. So there would certainly be relief in a secondary method to the neighborhoods.
One major hurdle that isn't for you to address, but it will be for us and more for the staff and more for Sterling. Sterling's here somewhere. It's not clear to me, in fact, it's been brought up to me by an attorney, that we can't, he doesn't believe we can differentiate the use of public state-owned right-of-way for different classes of residents. Residents meaning state residents, such that we can give passes to property owners here at the same time charging anybody coming from Mount Pleasant or any other place in the state, that they believe that that's not appropriate use of state assets, meaning the rights-of-ways. We're going to have to figure that out and see if that is in fact the case. We can't do anything that's illegal, and I don't want to get into starting something that's going to be challenged, that's going to take us years to work out, where we have a high probability of loss. And that's his concern, my concern also, to make sure we're legally sound.
Just want to know how much is it going, has anybody done any projections on how much it's going to cost to administer and enforce this on a daily basis?
I think that's for us to work out with staff.
We haven't gotten into that at all.
No, that's for us. They're giving us a skeleton. We have to then put flesh on it and decide whether the flesh is self-eating or not. It may be. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Okay. Let me just finish. So there's been no, unless I've not heard, and I don't think they've put any numbers to anything.
Well,
so that's an important element.
Yeah. Well, always look at the cost of something before you implement it.
Please.
I just heard something that I thought sounded really good, and I don't know if it went anywhere or not. Councilman Vitelli made a remark about the line of sight signage. Councilman Buchanan. And you mentioned the Public Safety Committee. To expand on what's been done with the Planning Commission, perhaps the Public Safety Committee could take up some of those two issues, line of sight, additional signage, and carry at least that forward.
Well, okay. Let me jump off of the pass system to all the other recommendations, and still it's an open forum. And we'll come back to the whole thing. You gave us both short and long-term recommendations here, which I'll use my analogy. It's skeleton, and the question is, how much flesh can fit on this skeleton, and can we support it financially? Is it worth it? So I sat down and said, okay, how do we digest this as council and as staff? How do we direct them? And so my recommendation would be to assign various elements of this to standing committees of council and let them, as a standing committee, flesh it out, figure out what the numbers are going to be for implementation, et cetera, both long and short-term goals here. For instance, my notes here have recorded the Public Safety Committee take up the issue of, I call it the parking control system, and enforcement thereof, which is the sticker annual pass system. Line of sight clearances at intersections. I would assign the Public Works Committee signage recommendations, to come forward with recommendations on where, and of course that has to be in coordination with the public safety, and the DOT has to approve all that stuff. But even so, have them deal with obstructions in the right-of-way, and the path. You recommended adding a path at the Citadel Beach Club with associated parking. We may have to visit that a little bit. 'Cause I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means.
What does that mean?
We'll come back to, let me finish my point. We may come back to all of them for that matter, but I have Public Works playing with that. I had Real Property dealing with, I refer to areas for beach visitor parking. That's making sure we're maximizing the utilization of our lots. We're creating a lot over here at 1301 Palm. Frankly, the city owns the lot next to the post office. It's not suitable for parking, but it could be made suitable for parking. So things of that nature, including in that, I said, okay, how about, because one of your long-range here recommendations dealt with the ocean side of Ocean Boulevard, so I would ask the Real Property Committee to work it on that recommendation. I would ask the Rec Committee to look at the term you refer to as bike racks. I'm assuming that bike racks near the beachfront areas, and golf cart provisioning, spaces for golf carts, et cetera. I would also ask them to, it's not for, well, bike paths. We've had numerous discussions, although it's not, I don't think it's in your recommendation, about putting bike paths on Palm Boulevard from Breach Inlet to 57th. That's a long-term and very costly venture, and not something that we have money for, but I don't even know what it would entail and whether there's even right-of-way clearance adequate to do all that. But somebody ought to, since it's brought up so frequently, we ought to put some flesh on it and see if it has enough substance there that the city can move forward and make recommendations to others. In that light, I can tell you that relative to line-of-sight clearances at intersections, it's the royal we, principally the staff, has been beating on the Department of Transportation for a better part of 2 years now for that activity. And the last communication was the signs are in production or near production, or they expect to have them to us before. The drop-dead date was, we need them before the next season. And they said, we hear you. So the DOT is, I can't predict where they're going, but at least they hear us. It's in work. We know that they're made in Columbia. They're not made locally. All that other stuff. So we should have some step forward on the line of sight interaction, particularly along Palm Boulevard and the avenues there. What else can I tell you about? I guess that's about it.
Can I ask a question?
There's one other point two other points I want to make. There is legislation, you may not have, recommendation for changing legislation in Columbia that would have the state, any monies collected on fines or parking in state rights-of-way, a third of that money, 30% or 35%, some number like that, would be swept up by the state, which of course has thrown everybody off kilter. Not us, because we don't have any parking in state right-of-ways presently where we charge, but other municipalities do have meters all along, and they're all up in arms. So personally, I don't think that's going to fly, but you ought to know that it's out there. The other initiative the DOT is putting forward is they want to turn over all roads, virtually all roads, to the local authorities, meaning the municipalities in which they're resident. They say, well, there'll be some compensation, et cetera, but that's, that has yet to be determined. The governor said she had $75 million in her budget for such initiative, but that's, of course, a statewide thing. So we have no idea where that's going. But one way we can get more control of our roads and put in our own parking system, et cetera, if it's tagging or whatever, is really take over the right-of-ways. But of course, that means we have the long-term and permanent care and maintenance of the roads and the infrastructure they're under. So that's a big commitment on our part if we choose to do it. But
Going back to public safety and Palm Boulevard, on one side of the road with the 4-foot set-off, which I thought was a great idea. That's parallel parking. On the other side of the road, I see perpendicular parking. For public safety, and from what y'all have heard over these public hearings, people backing out into traffic. I mean, have y'all talked about that? And parking away from driveways, and I mean, it seems like we could cut down on a lot of parking on Palm Boulevard by making both sides parallel parking. Go ahead, no.
We've talked about limiting parking to the ocean side of Palm. We've talked about limiting parking to the beach access areas. We've talked about a lot of things. I think what we are attempting to do is trying to get something done in the year of 2013. We wanted to try some type of a pay system and experiment it for a year, for a season, and see if it does limit parking. If it doesn't limit parking, then we can adjust the amount of passes that we're selling. But all that is just an experiment. If you get into trying to limit parking to the beach access areas, if you get into disallowing parking on Carolina, on the avenues around Ocean, and opening up parking on Ocean, these are all things that I don't see that we can get anything done in the year of 2013. So that was, we're struggling trying to get something going, and we wanted to try what would it do if we had people pay for parking. Something else that was mentioned, and I thought that this was kind of novel, it might create a traffic problem, but for the daily passes, you got Mr. Shump, 200, 300, whatever. He charges $7. He can sell those for $10. But that's directing everybody to the lots where we want them to go. So, just an idea.
Well, just one observation. If we are successful this year and can get in these signs for the line-of-sight clearances at the intersections, you'll be surprised at how limiting that will be on parking between those signs. And we'll free up people coming out of the avenue so that they can see in both directions, but also we'll squeeze the number of cars that can park in any block, if you will, down Palm Boulevard. Of course, then where do all those cars go? Well, they probably either go onto the avenues or further down Palm. I don't know. But it will be, I believe, safer, not only from a line-of-sight standpoint, but from a congestion standpoint. Now, whether that affects people's ability to back up and get out, or I don't know. So.
But back to the original question, though, the parallel parking versus the perpendicular, does our police department have a particular problem with people backing into traffic, or is it easier for them to back in parallel parking? I mean, just more curiosity than anything else.
When we've been looking at the parkers, in general, the people who park on the inland side will pull towards the sidewalk so that they don't have to back into traffic. I think the white line has been probably the most brilliant thing that anybody has come up with. It actually works, and I hope it keeps up. And we talked about doing the line on the other side so that people do know that they have to pull all the way to the sidewalk, so that they can back without pulling. But unfortunately, without the corner controls, people will drive across in front and across the sidewalks to get to the side street to get out. So once those signs are there and in effect, that would help. Just a small thing on another issue is keep in mind that we're talking 10 to 6, so that after 6 in the afternoon, anything goes. You know, anybody parks anywhere.
Can I make one more comment on, it certainly is easier if you're parallel parked to get out without disrupting traffic. But the other side of that is when somebody parks parallel like that 4 feet off the road and the door opens and a child gets out, they're right next to that road. Where if they're parking straight in, at least they're getting out on the side of the car. So that's something we've talked about.
Okay, good.
Well, the other part of that too, as I might add, is that in our discussion about that, and I think all of us have driven up and down all the streets and looked in detail, not just in a car, but walking or in a golf cart, and you see things a little bit differently. But the houses on the ocean side of Palm Boulevard, and that's where most of our discussion has been, about Palm Boulevard between 21st and 41st, is that there's more off-street parking in front of those houses than there is on the inland side. There's a lot more room there, but there was a recommendation actually, and then it was defeated the following week. If you limit the inland side of Palm Boulevard to parallel parking, then there's not enough room for all the rental houses that are along there to park, because there's not the same room in front of those houses on the inland side as there is on the ocean side.
And the residents, too.
And the residents as well. So that's the kind of the thing we looked at there.
Okay.
You know, the consistent theme that I think I've heard and now I've experienced is that we've been talking about this problem and this issue, and I'd like to see if we could maybe make a suggestion of how we can expedite, we're talking 213 now, with the City Council and the Planning Commission, if there's any ideas.
Well, actually, I had a thought that I've shared with a couple of people, and don't everyone go, oh, listen. I mean, we've got 2 committees. We've got, the Planning Commission has been beating their heads against the wall for years. I was on the Planning Commission. It's very difficult to come to a consensus on a very contentious issue. I don't believe the whole Planning Commission wants to limit parking. Some do, some don't. So we have all this tug and pull. I don't know how the City Council stands on it. What if we create another committee? 3 members, I said wait now. 3 members of the Planning Commission, 3 members of the City Council, 3 citizens, 1 from each area. Lock them in a room. They've got the bones. They've got, give them alcohol. But just again, they have to suss out things, and it still has to come to the City Council. But maybe this would take it one step further. The mayor's putting it off on the different committees.
I'm putting it on the committees because, frankly, without any substance of detail, which is really, a committee can get to more detail than a party of, or council of 9 or a commission of 7. But it all comes back to the staff to do the hard work and figure out what's necessary. And some of the stuff that I elaborated on can be done in a year. Some of it can be done in 2 years. Some of it may never be able to be done because we can't afford it, or it may be illegal under state statutes. But I think if we put it into a smaller group of council, they can call on, the Planning Commission is available at any time to meet with them for input and counseling, et cetera, but it all's going to wind up coming through staff anyhow when we get down to it.
I really like that suggestion. I think if in fact you had an action, a blue ribbon action committee, as Barbara suggested, 3 city council and 3 planning people and a number of citizens, we keep revisiting this, I think, and we kind of get bogged down in the minutiae, and that holds us up, as you had said in your article.
I didn't write it.
The more part of it. And that's the sense and impression I have, is that we just keep revisiting.
Well, until we try and put flesh on it, and no committee of planning and council is going to put any flesh on it. They're just going to come up with more imponderables. How much is this going to cost? can we do this? Is
Is there a
legal?
way to combine both ideas so that you could have basically 2 or 3 planning commission people as well as the public's safety people get together with one purpose in mind, not a regular?
Well, I would leave it,
And
my
et cetera, et cetera.
my reaction would be I'd leave it to the chair of the committee to involve what parties he wants to involve.
Yeah, it makes sense.
He's already got a standing committee of council. He can
Right.
involve, he or she can involve any member of the public or any member of the planning commission as the items dictate. And they can make it a standing group or just a one-time deal. That's up to them.
That's what it'd be we would offer as a commission to assist any of the
But-
committees in any way. Because of the time that we've spent, it might help expedite their process.
I'm in pain only because I got a cramp, so don't don't take it personal. Michael?
Well, I was, Ron, I think we were thinking similar. I'd like to see, number one, public's always welcome to all committee meetings, and every committee has public comments, so it's definitely encouraged that people get involved, and this is a very island-wide sensitive issue. It's the hot one right now. But I'd like to, my thoughts is maybe we could have members of the planning commission also assign and work with, say, the Public Safety Commission or the Public Works Committee, and have that way that we'd have a good cohesive communication back and forth where the Planning Commission could be sharing what their thoughts are about these different objects if they come up in the committee, and go back to the Planning Commission and go back and forth. So, example, Ron Denton you would be assigned to the Public Safety, and Bev, you would be with Public Works, except something like that, where if you'd be willing to volunteer additional time, that kind of input would, I think would be cohesive, plus hopefully we're going to continue to get public's comments on this issue.
Makes sense.
Marty,
And
please.
I was going to say, please don't think nothing's going to happen until 2013, because we talked about some things in this joint meeting today that can be done and are planned to be done. That's the signs from the intersections.
There's no reason why Ryan's picked, those are great.
Right, there's no reason we can't do the parking directional signs. We just need to flesh out what it's going to take to do that, which we can do.
I like that, and it's neat, too. It's not
You'll like this. Last time I met with the director from DOT for the area, we actually talked about putting an electronic sign up on the connector. And he hasn't got back to us about whether he structured. Yeah, well, structurally, he said he thought they had a mounting location where they could mount a sign. Now, how you get power to it's another question. Now, of course, we could go photovoltaic.
Could a flash island is
Oh,
full?
good.
Well,
So instead
close
of-
to that.
Instead of
Part-
seeing the ocean when you come over the hump, you
You
see
see
island is full.
well, it would be before the hump, frankly, is what we were talking. But anyhow,
Right.
But it would be. We haven't figured out what the sign's going to look like around. He was just saying if it could even be under their standards, could it even be mounted there? But he thought, didn't he say they could? But he hasn't got back to us. But then we could, when the lot's full, or the county park lot's full, we direct them to our lot, or we direct them to 1301, or we tell them to go.
Go home.
The island's full, or whatever. I mean, or expect a 20-minute, and part of it's also the safety, because, there's so much traffic coming on the island. It could be to slow down, please, there's traffic ahead, things like that, so. Right.
One of the other beach communities I've visited in the past and found it kind of interesting is when you go into an area that you're not used to, and you're not familiar, just besides the parking signs, is they run it like a small AM frequency, for information on parking, for information on things that are going on. You turn it to that station. So as you're driving around the island, it's cheap. You can mount the antenna right on the public safety building if you want to, but it just plays in a loop that can be updated just digitally. That type of information works pretty well.
I know, it reminds me of Disney.
Good. Right, and it does. It tells you whether, if you turn it on and say, parking lots, city parking lot, county parking lots full, or openings at, for information to park, and, what avenues, and, where the, that helps out a lot. So people can turn it to while they're driving, and they're still getting this audible information as well.
It's keeping it current will be the
Correct.
challenge.
Yes.
But back to what you
Please.
said about, interesting thing that the lawyer suggested, we perhaps cannot differentiate. What if we didn't charge for these passes? I mean, that would just be some input. I mean, we could still limit the passes, but the charging, would that be legal? Just
All
throwing it out
of
there.
all of these questions need to be flushed through. I mean, particularly if we're going to give the state a third,
Yeah.
whatever we collect, it seems to
I'd
be.
rather give them a third of nothing.
A third of nothing. That's what, Mike may still be here. I was going to say, that's what we get from the state. It's nothing.
What would be, if somebody were to come across and park on the, not have a pass, what would be the fine for that? That's set by the state. Or would it be, chief,
No.
or would it be set by their
I
city?
don't know.
The city?
Us.
Okay.
So what is the
It could be
fine?
whatever we wanted?
Yeah,
Okay.
within reason.
We have
Could be
fines
towed.
now, right? We have a certain,
Plus 33%.
Right.
plus 33.
It could be towing.
Just out of curiosity,
Towing area, yeah.
I've looked at the Beachfront Management Act, and I've looked at the number of parkings that's required, and I think we far exceed what's required for any beach community. And, you know, I hear our residents at the south end on the side streets complaining. I hear potential of parking on Ocean Boulevard, you know, as a long-term goal. I look at the side streets on the north end of 42nd, 43rd on up. And it just seems like we're trying to create parking places in neighborhoods, and our residents are upset. I mean, it'd really be nice to say, let's look at the Beachfront Management Act, let's look at Palm Boulevard, let's make sure we have X amount of spaces, but then it's done. You know,
Well, they
I think we're
did
working
all that.
on the premise that passes will be a self-limiting. 1,000 people are not going to show up at the same period of time, every single day, every single weekend. Maybe 10 will. Good weather, maybe they all come, but they won't all come for all day long and be there from 10 till 6. So the idea of just trying to limit it without creating really expensive other possibilities, like making tiny little parking lots here and there alongside each to access, or other things like that, building a parking garage, whatever, that if that works as a self-limiting event, then if it doesn't, we can stop. Go somewhere else.
Or limit the passes.
Limit the passes more.
Okay, let's,
Guess I'm maybe a voice of dissent here. All the things that when I was working, in the environment that I worked in, we didn't have this luxury. We were told, get something done and get it done now, and it better work, or you're going to shut the plant down. And we ran it, and we did it. I mean, you did what you had to do. I guess I'm saying, I think you guys ought to be able to do what they want to do. Let's throw the thing out, start out at the passes, and go for it. And then, obviously, there's going to be lots of mistakes. But now you're in the pond, you better figure out how to swim. That's where I'm coming from.
Kind of where we were. One other comment?
Okay.
I think a lot of things have been mentioned about population, and one of the things we've been dealing with and keeping in the back of the mind with all the items we've discussed is just what you mentioned. I mean, if there's 68,000 people in Mount Pleasant in 2012, how many are going to be there in another 5 years? And if there's 500,000 people in the Charleston metropolitan area, how many of them want to come to the beach? And that's going to continue to grow too. So we have to implement something, and at some point in time, the beach is full, and we've kind of, okay, well, how do you get to that point? So that's kind of where we were.
okay.
There again, we're looking at something that may have a potential to be put in place by season of 2013. If there was any, if we could do that, do the pass thing by 2013, and we still could do a little bit more, then I think that we should do it. And probably if we could limit parking in the ocean side of the island, off the avenues, and push the open up ocean on the ocean side. But I don't know that we can accomplish that by 2013. I think that the pass thing, if we can get that going by 2013, I think that we will accomplish something. And the residents want us to accomplish something. They want something done. So, we can pass it on to 2014 or 15 or whatever, but let's do something.
Before you, well, go ahead.
No, just the last comment. The will to do it. You could make no parking in the neighborhoods very simply. You just put up the signs and say resident only. So this thing, pushing it off year after year, is really valid. Do we have the will to limit parking on the Isle of Palms to residents only with some? And then that's the crux of the problem.
I want to get to a question we had before that we never flushed out. Barb brought up path at the Citadel Beach Club. It seems rather small issue relative to the bigger issue that we've been dealing with, but I don't know anything about it, so I'd like somebody at least to explain. I know what the Citadel Beach Club is, and we're talking about getting a right-of-way?
An access way right-of-way so that we could perhaps park adjacent, using the two side roads, access way paths. Some of the notions...
Using the existing roads, which are...
In front.
Well, yeah,
private roads.
They're private roads. Right.
That's why we need the right-of-way.
That's why we need the right-of-way. So we can park in the front of their regular parking lot.
Park on Palm and have some right-of-way through the Citadel property.
To walk to the beach.
Walk to the beach.
And perhaps maybe even using or asking them to allow us to park in the front portion of their parking lot where the old fire station used to be. Again, that notion came back to limiting parking throughout the island. And again, we do park far more cars than the Beachfront Management Act requires, and if you essentially node a few parking locations, it's my street, but it's a natural parking area on 42nd that's been kind of flagged to have 25 parked cars there because, frankly, it's set up for it right now. We're trying to find another one of those types of nodes that would not offend neighbors. In front of the Citadel Beach Club, where there already is parking, might be that potential spot. But the problem, if you park the cars there, they have to be able to get to the beach in 500 feet, and so that's kind of where this was coming from.
It's a reasonable pursuit.
Is anyone pursuing it, or is this just an idea?
No, it's an idea.
It's an idea.
It's an idea.
You want us to pursue it.
You asked.
And, it's worth a shot.
It's definitely an administrative.
We're not going to ask for people's guesstimate of probability here. But.
Right.
All right.
The comment I forgot wanted to make was about Barbara's comment about not allowing people to park in the neighborhoods, or generally. When you look at the Beachfront Management Act and the maps of the island and the 500-foot limitation, and the notion that if you're selling a parking pass for $65 a year, why the heck are you going to want to park way up on, the deep end of 25th Avenue? You're paying to park to get to the beach for the most part. Right. So, kind of think that this pay-for-parking pass system would pretty much take care or eliminate people parking up the avenues, parking beyond Cameron Boulevard, say, or that first or second row of homes. Hasn't really resolved with Carolina, but all of Carolina is further than 500 feet from the beach, so it's not even within our parking plan. But we just haven't been able to come up with a quick resolution for Carolina Boulevard.
Ocean Boulevard could be.
But it's not quick.
Okay. I think we've exhausted all our thoughts, questions, concerns. Unless I hear otherwise, I'm going to make recommendation with council that we follow the committee assignments that I elaborated earlier with planning, pulsing in formally or frankly informally, and any citizens too. And it's up to the chair of the committee to draft volunteers. Jim?
Can I throw one last little piece of meat on your skeleton?
Okay.
Did the commission look at like the parking lots that we have and having a shuttle going up and down the beach? Was that anything that's ever proposed?
It's been discussed.
It's been discussed and discussed and discussed.
Carter and.
Well, we even had the Carter guy showed up at one of the informal meetings, the one we had at the Lutheran place.
We had a private vendor who owns a shuttle who came to a couple of meetings as well. The practicality of it is something that I don't think we felt competent to deal with. The cost, how do you do it? Where are you going to take people from? From Mount Pleasant, maybe? If we could work something out with CARTA over in the future, I think that would be ideal.
Are you discussing a shuttle from downtown?
From our parking lots.
The problem with doing that, number one, it causes horrendous traffic problem. You've got a shuttle going up and down Palm, stopping every so often.
No pull-off.
Plus, where are you going to, I mean, if you fill the parking lots down there, where are they going to go? I mean, everything we're putting forth is really to force people into those parking lots. I don't think we need a shuttle.
Yeah, I was just thinking people parking in the parking lots and then not parking on our boulevards and being shuttled around and relieving the parking. I'm just, again, trying to think outside the box.
Actually, most of the comments from the people were against it.
Okay.
It was sort of, I wouldn't even say it was evenly balanced.
That's what I'm trying to find out.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to second your motion if that's what you were doing.
No, I wasn't. Well, okay, but
Before we get into that, Marty's on Carter's board, okay? And, I mean, what about something as far as, rather than cars coming to the island, is let's really try to influence, some type of a beach shuttle from Carter to pick people up in Mount Pleasant and bring people to the island, which is going to reduce some cars and parking.
Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah.
We have had a service for about a year now, and it costs, on the average, between $30 and $40 per person to do that. The other big problem that we would have to overcome is to find a place in Mount Pleasant where those folks can park. Those merchants want their customers to park in their parking lots. We're lucky we've got the Kmart unit there, but for the most part, they're not willing to give up their parking spaces for something that's to take persons from their businesses to somewhere else. And it's very, very costly.
one of the, to interpret what you just said, one of the biggest drains on Carter right now is service to the islands.
The biggest drain.
It is the biggest
Well,
drain.
in cost per passenger.
Yeah. Now, there was a private individual came and was supposed to be starting up a loop system on his own, bringing people over from basically the hotels in Mount Pleasant and bringing them to here in Sullivan's. Haven't seen him since. But he was doing it on his own. He felt he had a business plan that would work, and, we wished him well, and I'm not sure if you gave him a license yet, or has he come forward for a license?
I don't believe so.
All right, so maybe...
Thank you for listening.
Maybe it's not going to fly. Okay, is anybody...
We have a second.
We have a second, all right. All in favor? Any more discussion from council?
Just again about the passes, the number and where's that going to go from here? I mean, is it 1,000, is it 800 plus 200?
It's whatever we think is, we're going to take it on within the Public Safety Committee.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's my control system. And I'm more concerned, frankly, with the number, but how do we enforce? That's my personal concern, is how do we enforce all this stuff without adding 17 people to the staff and issuing passes and more beach service? But that's getting to the cost factor. When we figure out what this is all going to cost, we may choke.
It's not financially viable. It's
Right.
not going anywhere.
So, any more discussion on my recommendation? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Me.
All right.
Yeah.
One.
One.
I want to echo what Jimmy said earlier. We know this has not been a labor of love. It's been a hardship on the Planning Commission for the years that you've been doing it, and we want you to stay engaged, but I think between the committees of council in total, but more importantly, it's going to be a burden on staff. So we're going to need your expertise to be called upon and participate, so don't go away, don't throw your notes away, because as Jimmy's asked a number of questions and others have about, did you consider this, did you consider that? You considered almost everything, best I can tell. And, we'll make haste slowly here now, so I hope Linda and the staff are ready for all this. So. Thank you all. I don't have anything else to be discussed. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We're out of here. Thank you.